In a quiet town nestled between rolling hills, there stood an old library known for its extensive collection of rare books. The library was a grand, Gothic building with towering shelves, ornate carvings, and large, dusty windows that let in beams of sunlight during the day and eerie shadows by night. However, it wasn't the architecture or the books that made this library famous. It was the legend of the Phantom Librarian. Many years ago, a dedicated librarian named Eleanor had worked there. She loved the library and spent her days and nights organizing books, reading to children, and helping visitors find just the right book. One stormy night, a fire broke out in the library. Eleanor, determined to save as many books as she could, perished in the flames. Since then, it was said that her spirit lingered, continuing her work even in death. One chilly autumn evening, a young student named Sarah decided to visit the library to do some research for her history project. The sun was setting as she walked up the stone steps and pushed open the heavy creaking door. Inside, the library was silent except for the faint rustling of pages and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Sarah found a secluded corner and began searching for books related to her topic. She pulled out a heavy volume and settled into a comfortable armchair. The words on the page drew her in, and soon she was lost in the past. As the clock struck midnight, Sarah heard a soft, whispering sound. She looked up but saw no one. Shrugging it off as her imagination, she returned to her book. But the whispering grew louder, and she felt a chill in the air. The shadows seemed to move, and the beam of her reading lamp flickered. "Is someone there?" Sarah called out nervously. A cold breeze brushed past her, and she saw a faint ethereal figure standing by the shelves. It was a woman in an old-fashioned librarian's outfit, her eyes kind but sad. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized she was seeing the Phantom Librarian. "Are you Eleanor?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. The ghostly figure nodded and pointed to a shelf in the far corner of the room. Sarah, both frightened and curious, followed the direction of the ghost's gesture. She found an old dusty book that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. When she opened it, she discovered it was Eleanor's journal. Inside the journal were detailed accounts of Eleanor's life, her love for the library, and the night of the fire. Sarah read about Eleanor's bravery and her final moments. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the depth of Eleanor's dedication. The spirit of Eleanor stood silently beside Sarah, watching her read. When Sarah finished, she looked up and whispered, "Thank you for showing me this." The ghostly figure smiled and began to fade away. Before disappearing completely, Eleanor pointed to a hidden compartment in the back of the journal. Inside, Sarah found a key and a note. The note read, "To the one who truly loves books, this key is for you." Sarah used the key to unlock a small, hidden room in the library. Inside, she discovered a treasure trove of rare and valuable books, all preserved from the fire. It was a collection Eleanor had saved and hidden away. From that night on, Sarah felt a deep connection to the library. She volunteered there regularly, taking on the role of caretaker for the hidden collection. The Phantom Librarian was never seen again, but Sarah always felt Eleanor's presence, guiding and protecting the library she loved so dearly. The legend of the Phantom Librarian became a cherished story in the town, inspiring generations to appreciate the magic and mystery of books. And whenever a cold breeze swept through the library, the visitors would smile, knowing that Eleanor was still there, watching over her beloved books. In the heart of a dense ancient forest, there was a small abandoned village that few dared to enter. Among the ruins stood a decrepit mansion, known to the locals as the House of Echoes. Legend had it that a ghostly melody could be heard emanating from the house every night at midnight. One stormy evening, a young musician named Liam, drawn by the stories, decided to investigate the mysterious melody. Armed with only a flashlight and his violin, he ventured into the forest. The trees loomed overhead, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out to him. Rain poured down, soaking him to the bone, but he pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As he approached the village, the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence fell. The only sound was the squelching of his boots in the mud. The mansion loomed ahead, its windows dark and foreboding. Taking a deep breath, Liam pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked ominously on its hinges. Inside, the house was in ruins. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked under his weight. He walked cautiously through the rooms, his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a soft, haunting melody began to play. It was faint at first, but gradually grew louder, filling the house with its melancholic tune. Liam followed the sound up a grand staircase and down a long hallway, the music growing ever more beautiful and sorrowful. It led him to a dusty old music room. In the center of the room stood an ancient grand piano, its keys moving as if played by invisible hands. Transfixed, Liam watched as the ghostly melody continued. He felt a strange compulsion to join in. Slowly, he raised his violin and began to play along with the piano. The music seemed to envelop him, and he lost himself in the haunting harmony. As the final note echoed through the room, the piano fell silent. Liam opened his eyes to find himself alone. The house was still and silent once more. He felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that he had been playing with the spirit of a long-dead musician. Determined to leave, Liam turned to go, but the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. Panic set in as he tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Then the piano began to play again, this time more urgently. A voice, barely a whisper, seemed to come from the walls. "Free me. Help me." Realizing that the spirit was trapped, Liam searched the room for clues. He found an old tattered diary hidden in the piano bench. It told the story of a young composer who had been murdered in the house many years ago. His spirit was bound to the piano, unable to rest until his final composition was completed. Understanding what he needed to do, Liam picked up his violin once more. He played the notes described in the diary, pouring his heart into the music. The piano responded, and together they completed the final, haunting composition. As the last note hung in the air, a soft light filled the room. The spirit of the composer appeared, looking peaceful at last. He nodded in gratitude before fading away, the piano falling silent forever. The door to the room creaked open and Liam, feeling a profound sense of relief and accomplishment, stepped out into the hallway. The house seemed less menacing now, as if a dark presence had been lifted. He hurried back through the mansion and out into the forest, the storm having passed. When Liam returned to his own village, he shared the story of his eerie adventure. The haunting melody of the House of Echoes was never heard again, and the old mansion gradually crumbled into dust. But Liam knew that he had helped a restless spirit find peace, and the memory of that haunting melody stayed with him forever. In a bustling city, there was a small hidden garden known only to a few. This garden, tucked away behind an old library, was said to be enchanted. The locals whispered that the garden had magical properties that could bring peace and happiness to anyone who found it. One sunny afternoon, a young girl named Emma, who loved reading and exploring, stumbled upon an old dusty book in the library. The book was titled, "The Secrets of the Enchanted Garden." Intrigued, Emma checked it out and began to read. The book described a beautiful garden filled with vibrant flowers, sparkling streams, and ancient trees. It also contained a map with detailed instructions on how to find this hidden paradise. Determined to uncover the garden's secrets, Emma set out the next day. Following the map, she navigated through the city's busy streets until she reached the old library. Behind it, she discovered a narrow, overgrown path that led to a wooden gate covered in ivy. With a mix of excitement and curiosity, Emma pushed open the gate. To her amazement, she found herself in the most breathtaking garden she had ever seen. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the gentle sound of a babbling brook soothed her senses. Butterflies fluttered around, and birds sang melodious tunes from the treetops. Emma wandered through the garden, marveling at its beauty. She came across a small pond with crystal-clear water, where colorful fish swam gracefully. Nearby, a stone bench sat under a large ancient tree. Emma sat down, feeling a deep sense of calm and contentment wash over her. As she relaxed, she noticed an inscription on the bench. It read, "To those who find this garden, may you always remember the peace and joy it brings." Emma smiled, feeling grateful for this magical place. She spent the entire afternoon there, reading her book and enjoying the serene surroundings. Over the next few weeks, Emma visited the enchanted garden regularly. She found that spending time there not only brought her happiness, but also inspired her to be more creative and thoughtful in her daily life. She even shared the secret of the garden with a few close friends, who also found solace and joy in its beauty. One day, as Emma was leaving the garden, she saw an elderly man standing by the gate. He introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, the former librarian. He told Emma that the garden had been a sanctuary for him for many years, and that he was glad someone else had discovered its magic. Emma and Mr. Thompson struck up a friendship, and he shared many stories about the garden's history and the people who had found happiness there. Together, they took care of the garden, ensuring that it remained a hidden haven for those who needed it. As time went on, the enchanted garden became a cherished secret among a select few. Emma continued to visit, finding peace and inspiration in its beauty. She knew that the garden's true magic lay not just in its enchanting scenery, but in the happiness and tranquility it brought to those who discovered it. And so the enchanted garden remained a place of wonder and joy, hidden away from the bustling city, waiting to be discovered by those with the heart and curiosity to find it. Late one evening in a small isolated village, a young woman named Emily sat alone in her living room. The house was eerily quiet, with only the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards breaking the silence. Emily was engrossed in a book, the only light coming from the flickering candles around her. As the clock struck midnight, a sudden chill filled the room. Emily shivered and pulled her blanket tighter around her. She was about to return to her book when she heard it, a soft whisper barely audible, coming from the darkest corner of the room. Emily! Emily! Her heart began to race. She tried to convince herself it was just the wind, but deep down she knew it wasn't. The whispering continued, growing louder and more insistent. Emily! Come to me! Fear gripped her, but curiosity pushed her to stand up. She slowly walked towards the corner, her footsteps echoing in the stillness of the house. As she got closer, she saw a shadow moving against the wall, even though there was no source of light to cast it. Emily! I need you! The voice was clearer now, almost tangible. Emily's hand trembled as she reached out to touch the shadow. The moment her fingers brushed against the darkness, a freezing cold enveloped her. Suddenly, she was no longer in her cozy living room. She found herself in a dark, damp basement. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. She could hear the faint sound of dripping water echoing through the space. Help me! The voice was right next to her ear now. Emily turned around, but there was no one there. Panic surged through her as she realized she was trapped in a place she didn't recognize. She stumbled through the darkness, searching for a way out. In the distance she saw a faint light. Desperate, she ran towards it, only to find herself in front of an old, decrepit mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, but something was off. The eyes in the mirror were not her own. They were cold and lifeless. Join us, Emily. The whispering voices surrounded her, and she felt a hand grasp her shoulder. She turned to see shadowy figures closing in on her, their faces twisted with malice. No! She screamed, trying to break free, but the grip tightened. With a final desperate effort, Emily closed her eyes and willed herself to wake up. The whispers grew louder, more frenzied, until everything went silent. She opened her eyes and found herself back in her living room, the candles still flickering. It was as if nothing had happened, but she knew better. The chill in the air and the lingering whisper in her ear were reminders that the shadows were always watching, waiting for their next opportunity to pull her back into their dark embrace. From that night on, Emily never stayed alone in her house after dark. The whispers never left her, a constant reminder that the shadows were always there, lurking just beyond the edge of the light.
One sunny morning, a group of friends decided to go on an adventure deep into the jungle. There were 4 of them: Jack, Lisa, Tom, and Sarah. They were excited and a little bit nervous, as none of them had ever been in a jungle before. They packed their backpacks with water, snacks, a map, and a compass, ready for a day of exploration. As they entered the jungle, they were immediately surrounded by the dense, lush greenery. The air was humid, and the sounds of the jungle filled their ears. Birds chirped melodiously, insects buzzed, and the leaves rustled gently in the breeze. The friends walked along a narrow path, their eyes wide with wonder. Jack, who was leading the group, suddenly stopped. "Look over there," he whispered. The others followed his gaze and saw a family of monkeys swinging from tree to tree. The monkeys chattered and played, completely unbothered by the presence of the humans. Lisa took out her camera and snapped a few pictures, capturing the playful energy of the monkeys. They continued their journey, marveling at the variety of plants and animals they encountered. Brightly colored flowers dotted the landscape, and they spotted a toucan with its vibrant beak perched on a high branch. Tom, who loved birds, was thrilled to see such a beautiful creature up close. After walking for a couple of hours, they decided to take a break by a small, clear stream. They sat down on the rocks and took out their snacks. As they ate, they noticed a butterfly with stunning blue wings fluttering nearby. Sarah held out her hand, and to her surprise, the butterfly landed on her finger. She smiled in delight as it stayed there for a few moments before flying away. Feeling refreshed, the friends continued deeper into the jungle. They followed the map to a hidden waterfall that they had heard about from a local guide. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they approached. Finally, they saw it. A magnificent waterfall cascading down into a crystal-clear pool. The sight was breathtaking. The friends couldn't resist the temptation to swim. They changed into their swimsuits and jumped into the cool water. They laughed and splashed around, enjoying the refreshing break from the heat. After a while, they climbed out and sat on the rocks, letting the sun dry their skin. As the day started to wind down, they realized it was time to head back. They gathered their belongings and began the trek back to the edge of the jungle. The journey back seemed shorter, perhaps because they were so full of the day's adventures. When they finally emerged from the jungle, they were tired but happy. They had experienced the beauty and mystery of the jungle firsthand and created memories they would cherish forever. The adventure had brought them closer together and made them appreciate the wonders of nature even more.